Well, Larry, we're here at Radio America where we've just recorded an episode of your radio show, Special Prosecutor, with Larry Klayman. Thank you for joining me.
Good. Yeah, the difference is Robert Mueller is special persecutor, special prosecutor.
Exactly. And that's really what we want to talk about
Yeah.
is the case of Corsi versus Mueller. We just yesterday had the first hearing, really, in that matter with Judge Leon, and there's been a lot of negative reporting in the mainstream press, but that's not a surprise.
Right.
Give us a little bit, the thing that I like about Crowdsource the Truth is that we've got an opportunity to sit here and not do a 2-minute segment where some headline blasts out, but really to help people understand what's gone on. And I think a lot of people have that question in their mind right now. What went on in that courtroom?
Yeah, well, let me give you the background here. And frankly, our case is moving on, so it didn't really affect our case at all, but it was an interesting encounter with Judge Leon.
Who you have
Perhaps
some experience with.
Encounter of the third kind, in a way. And when I filed this lawsuit, of course, we have several cases for Jerry Corsi. One is our criminal complaint at the Justice Department for Robert Mueller's prosecutorial misconduct, and our bar complaint before D.C. Bar Disciplinary Council. And then we have our court case, which we filed over illegal surveillance without probable cause, similar to the case that I brought years ago where we were victorious in getting preliminary injunctions against the Obama deep state intel agencies.
But this is a civil case.
This is a civil case. And we sued Mueller personally for that, for large damages, and we asked for an injunction. And we also sued over the leaks of grand jury information, which are criminal.
Yeah. Now, let me help the people who maybe don't have that much legal background. And the injunction is intended to stop while everybody figures out what's going on, to enjoin the government against doing this NSA spying, right?
Well, to enjoin Mueller from proceeding against Corsi.
Okay.
Because there's prosecutorial misconduct here.
I see.
In a number of ways. I mean, we know what the story is with Corsi because he's been on the air a lot and we've written articles. I have a column coming out tonight on WorldNet Daily. Go to worldnetdaily.com. It's going to talk about some of the things we're talking about with Judge Leon. But Corsi was told that if he did not agree to a plea agreement and agree to testify against the president by lying, that he would be indicted, that he wouldn't get off with one count of a felony in no time, but that they would put him away for life.
And this has become basically standard procedure, isn't that right, Larry? They basically get somebody roped up in something scary. You got a lawsuit, you got criminal charges against you. Hey, you could be going to jail for years. Why don't you take this plea deal?
Well, no, could be. You will be.
They say that.
Yeah, you will be going to jail for years. We have all
But that's just the threat, right?
We have all this stuff about you. You don't know about it, okay? And if you don't cooperate, it's going to get worse than what you think it's even going to be. But we'll let you plead out to one count of perjury and recommend no time if you'll testify that the president was engaged in collusion with Russia. Okay. And Jerry, who I've known for 25 years, he's a good person. He's religious. He says, I'm not going to lie in front of my creator, number one. Number two, I'm not going to have this moniker of being a felon on the rest of my life, where I lose my right to vote and everything else.
Well, and every news article then begins with, instead of now, how they smear him by saying conspiracy theorist Jerome Corsi, they would then say felon Jerome Corsi.
Right, well, like they do with Sheriff Arpaio.
Who's not even a felon.
Who's not even a felon.
But they say it anyway.
I got lawsuits on that against, 4 different publications and counting.
I don't know how you keep it all together.
And so, he couldn't do that. And he's a courageous guy. So he came to me and he said, Larry, can you work with my local counsel, David Gray?
Right.
And David's a local lawyer. He does, personal injury and family law stuff. He doesn't do the kind of stuff I do, so we're a good team. And I said, Jerry, it's my honor to help you. And Jerry's the one person who's sticking his neck out here.
Exactly.
He's doing what President Trump should have done, but for the bad advice that he's getting from his TV lawyers.
Right.
Who spend more time going on Fox News and other networks and actually doing legal work, and the president's getting dragged along. But so what we did was we came up with a strategy that we're going to go on the offense. That we're going to hold Mueller accountable. That he wants to play the game, we can play the game too. And so we filed the criminal complaint with the Justice Department, and we filed a civil complaint for large damages, $350 million of damages against Mueller for violating Fourth Amendment constitutional rights to privacy, not to be surveilled without probable cause that you committed a crime,
Right.
and grand jury leaks. And because Judge Leon had made these good decisions for us years ago, preliminary enjoining the Obama deep state intelligence agencies,
Right.
under the local rules, because he had expertise and the facts and the law were similar, common issues of law and fact, I designated him as the judge as a related case.
Right.
And when that happens, the opposing party, which in this case is Mueller and the Justice Department, the FBI, the NSA, CIA, they can object. Judge Leon immediately set this down for a hearing on January 3rd.
They did object initially.
And they
right?
did object. And then when there was the partial shutdown, the government says, oh, we have to delay the whole thing because we're not allowed to go to work anymore.
Right.
So I filed an opposition to their motion to stay the case. And Leon said, no, we're coming in on January 3rd. So
Well, that led me and I think a lot of people to believe that Judge Leon was enthusiastic about this case, and I incorrectly assumed that that meant that he wanted to do the follow-through here with all of the NSA illegal spying, all of the other cases.
that would be a
you've brought
reasonable
before.
assumption. Now, what happened with the original cases that I brought against the Obama deep state intelligence agencies, the NSA, CIA, Director of National Intelligence, all of that, is that those injunctions where Leon made very strong rulings that the conduct of the government was almost Orwellian, police state, 1984, caused Congress to enact a new law called the USA Freedom Act, which was meant to alleviate this illegal surveillance where telephone records couldn't be left in the hands of the telephone companies and then provided to the government. And you'd have to get a warrant or some certification to have it come over, in this case from Verizon. And I was the lead plaintiff. The case is called Klayman v. Obama.
But this is the way it should work.
Right. But what happened was the government appealed the preliminary injunctions. It went up to the District of Columbia Circuit, the D.C. Circuit, the appellate court. And 3 judges, 2 of them Obama and Clinton appointees, one a Bush appointee, none other than Judge Brett Kavanaugh, sat on that panel.
Right.
The Clinton appointees and the Obama appointees said, well, the case is now moot because you don't need a preliminary injunction. Now you have the USA Freedom Act, which protects everybody. Kavanaugh wrote a gratuitous opinion saying that, in fact, Leon was wrong initially in finding that it was a violation of the Fourth Amendment.
Let's be clear here. Judge Kavanaugh was saying that Leon was wrong to say that the constant collection of every phone call, every email,
Right.
every text message, everything on everybody's phone and computer, the government collecting that, Kavanaugh says that's not unconstitutional.
Now, why did he do that? In all
Yeah,
likelihood?
why?
Kavanaugh's a political animal. I didn't support him until he got attacked. I figured he was better than anybody else we'd get at the time.
Wow.
But he's very political. His whole life has been geared to becoming a Supreme Court justice.
He's a Bush guy. He's a George
He's
W.
a yes man. Okay, he's a yes man. He's part of the establishment. And the reality is the Republican establishment likes these Orwellian laws, interestingly enough. It's the left that actually has more problems with them than the right. When I won, I was getting more accolades from the left than the right. And, you know, it's a civil libertarian type approach. And in fact, Trump has made mistakes. He has reauthorized some of these laws, which are very
that were used
draconian.
against him.
They've been used against him.
It's crazy.
Bad advice. So Kavanaugh wrote that opinion, and he didn't have to write it. Even the Clinton and Obama appointees just said moot. But Kavanaugh
So this
wanted
is some
to. He was
extra.
currying favor to one day be appointed by a Republican president to the Supreme Court. So, to make the long story short, Leon then sits on the cases for 2 years. Even though the preliminary injunction had been vacated or nullified, the cases went on because I had complaints for money damages against individuals in these intelligence agencies like Brennan and Clapper and others. But Leon did nothing. And then I learned from a source that Leon himself had been illegally surveilled by these intelligence agencies. And consequently, it then explained to me why he had sat on these cases. And lo and behold, a few years later, he issued a show cause order saying why the cases shouldn't be dismissed.
Years. I mean,
And
this case is sitting there for
He
years.
dismissed the cases ultimately, and then I filed a pleading and said, Your Honor, I need to know, in all respect, have you had contact with the intelligence agencies? Were they leaning on you, coercing you, extorting you, blackmailing you to get rid of these cases? Because I understand they've surveilled you.
Yeah.
He wouldn't respond. He made a kind of a wise-ass remark, that's Klayman with his conspiracy theories.
So what type of communication is this? This is pleadings or emails?
Through pleadings and orders, okay?
You never have any kind of communication with the judge outside of that.
No, but I expressed, my thanks that he made the initial rulings, and I've always been complimentary of him, but I asked him this directly.
Right.
Because I had to ask him. I have clients. I have myself. I had other clients in these cases. And he wouldn't respond. So these cases are now up on appeal. I'm going to be in court next week. Members of the public and the media are invited to attend. You may be there on January 9th at 9:30 in the District of Columbia Circuit. I'll be arguing the appeals. But here's what's really interesting, is that when Kavanaugh came up on his confirmation hearings before the Senate, I didn't support him. I even offered to testify against him.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, because Fourth Amendment rights are sacrosanct.
Right.
He's
He's anti-constitution.
Right. And the Democrats, primarily, started to lean on him. And they said, why did you write that opinion? Why did you say that this unconstitutional surveillance is okay when you didn't have to write it at all?
Yeah.
So he tried to backtrack, and he made an excuse, and he said, there was a case that came out of the Supreme Court just last June, 2018, called Carpenter versus United States.
Right.
And this Supreme Court case, which says it's not okay to track your movements through GPS without a warrant if you're the government, I would have ruled differently. I would have agreed with Judge Leon. That's what he wrote, to get himself off the hook. And so I've got a great chance of overturning these cases.
Next week.
Yeah. But when I filed this case for Jerry Corsi, for Dr. Corsi, there's so many ultra-leftist Clinton and Democrat appointees in that court, I figured maybe if I assigned it initially as related to Leon, maybe he had had a change of heart. Maybe he, would have been chastened by my asking him that question. And maybe with Mueller, he would take a special interest in doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Okay? It was better than letting it possibly go to some radical leftist hack judge like Amy Berman Jackson over there, who's had the Manafort trial. So anyway, so when he called me in yesterday for the hearing, and I'll give you the transcript, which just was printed up. You can disseminate it on your website. I tried to tone it down, and I said, Your Honor, I'm back here again. Nice to see you. The American people have you to thank. They were the last line of defense. You made those very fine decisions, initially. And this case is, like you said with the other case, at the pinnacle of national importance. I was trying to flatter him. Some people think I tried to flatter him too much. And, he listens to me for 10 minutes, and I explain why the case is related, and I give him case precedent. Our so-called government Justice Department, the old Democrats on the other side, deep state, gets up and says, well, because the plaintiffs aren't the same in both cases, one's Corsi, the other was Klayman and his clients, it's not related. But I had a case that showed that that wasn't the case either.
Right. Meaning that it doesn't have to be the exact same plaintiff.
Right, and also, there is some law that says that if a case isn't pending, you can't assign it to that judge if the case is already up on appeal. But there's another case which says in unusual circumstances, that's why I gave you the background of this Carpenter case, that you can nullify that concept as well. And it's very likely that I'm going to win this and it's going to come back to Leon, the initial cases. Anyway, to make it more simple, Leon reads this statement that he had pre-prepared. It was clear that there was no reason to have the hearing.
Right.
And he dismissed everything I said. And then he took personal offense. It looked like he was taking personal offense that I had questioned whether the intel agencies had leaned on him, this deep state.
See, that's something that only you detected, because I didn't know any of this other stuff yesterday.
You couldn't figure out what was going on.
I thought it was very strange that we had a hearing where the guy basically said, I'm giving this to the random selection of another judge. was like, why don't you just
Right.
write
You
a
would
letter?
think you would want to keep it, right? It's high profile.
Well, I went in there thinking he's going to adjudicate this case because he's obviously interested. He wouldn't let them, do this motion to stay, and it seemed like he was interested. He's been involved in all these other cases, and he just gets in there and says, "We're giving it to another
and why
judge."
would you want to? He was the one that wanted to have a hearing.
Right.
He's the one that told the government, "You're not getting off because
Right.
it's a shutdown. You're coming in on your own time."
Yeah.
But he wanted to make a statement, and he wanted to deny that the deep state intel agencies had ever leaned on him.
But I think he wanted to make you look bad. He
Yeah,
knew that all these
it was
headlines.
It was personal in a way, and and I tried to damp it down. And then at the end of his proclamation, when he threw the case back in the pond for random selection, I tried to say something, and he runs off the bench.
I detected that. There's a word
like
halfway out
a
your mouth.
banshee. I mean, he's frightened to actually have to face the fact that his legal decision was totally wrong. So, we left it at that. The case was put back in the random selection. It came out to Judge Helen Siegel Uvel. She was an appointee of George H.W. Bush to the Superior Court. She then was elevated by Clinton to the federal court. She may be okay because in a ruling that she made years ago against the Voice of America, our propaganda network, so to speak, a good propaganda that promotes freedom, she allowed one of the employees who had been sexually discriminated against to sue the actual board members of the Voice of America. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm suing Mueller individually under a case called Bivens.
Has that ever been successful in this type of case, to sue the...
Yeah, I had cases when I was running Judicial Watch against Louis Freeh, the FBI director.
Oh, really?
Went forward.
Yeah, there's so much for us to talk about.
But I left before that case was ever adjudicated. I left to run for the Senate, and the people I left behind didn't know how to handle the case, and nothing ever happened with Fitton and Company. They didn't succeed. So it's it may be a blessing in disguise. I wouldn't want Leon to have it. To me, it looks like, and this is what my column in WorldNet Daily says, looks to me like he's still intimidated. He believes that he was surveilled.
Yeah.
And he believes they have dirt on him. That's the way I interpret it. And he just got scared, and he ran away. And it's better that we not have him. So, while the leftist media tried to present it as a setback for Jerry Corsi, it wasn't.
Right.
And I think by
Literally
the grace of God, Leon doesn't have the case.
Well, and literally no legal impact on Dr.
No legal
Corsi's
impact. The case continues on.
But it does waste time. It does waste Dr. Corsi's money. You flew here. He, took the train or whatever.
Well, yeah, but on the other hand, we had a press conference.
Yeah.
And it's good for the American people to understand what's going on, and I think they're smart enough, at least a lot of them, to know that the Huffington Posts of the world and the NPRs, they're always going to twist and present it in the light most favorable to harming President Trump, and people that are trying to help President Trump. So
and
there were some good articles that came out of it.
I think there are a lot of people who are getting much more engaged, and not just in the political process, but I really had never, I've been to like traffic court and jury duty and stuff like that, but I've never gone to a court case that I've said, hey, I'm interested in learning about this, and go there. And now I've seen you in 2 different hearings with Judge Sullivan and now with Judge Leon, and it's just so interesting to sort of, read the room and just understand this process. It's so difficult to even hear what the judge is saying in the gallery.
There's another explanation for it. He's now a senior judge. I've had him on a couple cases. He doesn't want to work that hard anymore.
Right.
And maybe he just figured, I don't need the aggravation.
It's like he had a restaurant
of
to
being
go
in the
to.
limelight. And it was weird because you go into the courtroom, and it wasn't that way when I was before him before, but the lights were really dim.
This weird
He had
lamp.
this bizarre lamp up there. You
I
can see
noticed
it.
that
You've got
right
a picture
away.
up there. And
Oh yeah, the artist captured the lamp.
it was
Look
like
at
he was
that.
about ready to conduct a seance. It was really strange.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm being a little facetious. But anyway, look, I thank Judge Leon for what he did, and that's why I did compliment him. And he said at the end, he says, Mr. Klayman, I'm glad you made those comments. But the fact is he chickened out. And that's, and the fact that a federal judge would feel that way shows you the power of even perceiving that you might be subject to illegal surveillance. And that is what prevents a lot of politicians and and government people in a high-level position to take a strong stand in this city, because if you go against this deep state, they'll destroy you.
Right. I mean, Robert Mueller
This is the Orwellian deep state.
I think it's way beyond that, because Orwell never envisioned the degree to which everyone would voluntarily, we're tracking ourselves, we're sending all this information, they're just sitting there and collecting it, you know?
Well, you know, on your phone, you can actually designate, if you want to track where your parents are, you know,
Your kids, you mean?
You can, yeah, you can put it in there, it'll tell you exactly where they are. That's the technology we have today. It's unbelievable.
It is. I mean, that's a whole other topic to
iPhone.
discuss about kids and parents, and that's one thing. But for the government, I mean, like what you're describing, you know, Judge Leon obviously has been intimately involved in all of these cases having to do with the NSA. He knows the facts. He knows the evidence. It's not even a question of have you been surveilled.
Well, he's a very enigmatic figure, okay? And again, I thank him for what he did, you know, up front. But his reputation in the courthouse is a loner. He can be very gruff. He wouldn't let Jerry Corsi's wife sit at the table.
Yeah.
I mean, he should have done that as a matter of courtesy.
Right.
And he took it personally, and he shouldn't take it personally, because it wasn't meant personally. I had a duty to ask the question, you know, were you contacted by these agencies? Because there's no way these cases could have been dismissed before we had discovery, before we went through the processes. He just went like that and dismissed them. And frankly, the way he behaved was criminal.
Yesterday, you mean?
No, I mean dismissing the cases. You don't wipe people's rights away just because you feel like it, if you're a judge.
But they do it all the time.
They do it all the time, and I've actually, you know, proposed a way to change the law so judges don't have absolute immunity for some of the decisions that they make. I think they should be held accountable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they harm people by doing that, and they think they're above the law, particularly federal judges.
Absolutely, the lifetime appointment and all that.
Yeah.
So let's get back to Robert Mueller for a second, because he really, you know, the FBI doesn't seem to have changed very much from the days when J. Edgar Hoover basically ran this town. We're in Washington, D.C. right now, of course, and it's well known, ran this town because he had a dossier on everyone. It's rumored that he provided Lyndon Johnson with a dossier including photographs of John F. Kennedy in a romantic tryst with an East German spy.
Yeah, Alan Romish.
Right, and Johnson basically went to there's a famous photograph of Bobby Kennedy and John Kennedy in a hotel room, and he's got his head in his hands. Apparently Lyndon Johnson had just left where he presented this dossier, and he said, I'm either going to be the vice president or I'm going to go give this to Richard Nixon and you can deal with it in November. So Johnson muscled his way in there.
Right.
And that's,
well, and Hoover did the same thing with Martin Luther King.
Right.
He had him in compromising positions with women and that kind of thing.
sending
he
him
was a
messages to
reverend.
kill himself and all kinds of
Alleged
stuff.
contacts with communists and things like that. And yeah, I mean, he was a ruthless individual, Hoover. And magnify that a millionfold with the power of the National Security Agency and CIA.
Computers and all that.
And Hoover was an amateur compared to what
so
they have today.
Robert Mueller is like the Mecca Hoover. He's like this giant cyber. and listen, let's not forget that there have been cases where evidence can be planted on someone's computer. Well, you know, the possession of, for instance, child pornography. There was that article about the Pentagon was buying all this child porn. When I first saw that, I thought that was shocking. But now, years later, I wonder, did somebody put that there to frame those guys? Because we see they're in the regular practice of intimidating somebody like Jerry Corsi, using these plea arrangements to threaten people with gigantic criminal charges, which, let's also, for a moment, take a step back. They're basically all over Dr. Corsi for communicating with WikiLeaks, which
he says he didn't do.
he didn't do, but also, hello, Robert Mueller, WikiLeaks is not Russia. So even if you communicated...
There was nothing wrong with that.
And even if you communicated with Russia, there's nothing wrong with that. What we need is a specific crime. No one is addressing, you know, it's like if there was some meeting where person A and person B sat down and said, hey, let's hack the computers and rig the election, that's a detailed crime that there should be a lot of evidence of, but they're just off in the weeds looking for all this nonsense, and so much time and so much effort and so much money is being spent oh, we can't come in today because there's a government shutdown. Oh, we had a email migration problem. We can't produce your documents, Mr. Klayman. I mean, it's just one ridiculous excuse after the next, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it works. And, you know, in Jerry's case, when he got in front of the grand jury, and David Gray was there, and he was a witness to this, my co-counsel. Jeannie Rhee, who defended the Clinton Foundation in a case that I brought a RICO case in the Southern District of Florida, mocks Jerry's religion when he says, "I will not lie in front of my God." I doubt that she's a Christian or a Jew or anything like that, and, you know, mocks his religion. Aaron Zelinsky threatens him, others over there, in a number of different ways. Tell him, "I'm going to put you away for life."
Yeah,
We've got all this stuff.
Thug tactics.
Thug tactics. And then what they've been doing lately, when Jerry turned down the agreement, to put it mildly, told them to go stick it where the sun doesn't shine.
Right.
They're following his family and friends around, and they're intimidating his stepson, showing up and interrogating them. They're leaking grand jury information about him trying to help cancer victims in Florida. And, you know, the same thing happened to me when I was running Judicial Watch and going against the Clintons. People follow me home. They would take pictures of my house. They followed my employees. They were bouncing microwaves off the windows at Judicial Watch to find out what I was saying.
How do you know it was microwaves?
I brought somebody in, a professional.
Wow. They could have been attempting to hit you with microwaves, to injure you.
Well, yeah. Well, and in fact, I was run off the road. This is an interesting story. I was in Dallas with Tom Fitton at the time. He was my assistant, and we had a fundraiser there. And I was going to meet Dolly Kyle Browning, one of the Clinton women that I was representing.
Right.
And we were going down the east-west highway. And all of a sudden, some guy swerves over and tries to run us off the road. We go into a spin.
Wow.
If it hadn't been a Sunday, we would have been hit by all kinds of cars with the traffic. It wasn't the football season then.
Wow.
And I believe that that was an attempt to kill us when we were in Dallas.
Wow.
That the Clinton people were trying to do that. And of course, we know 80 people minimum died during Bill and Hill's reign of terror during that time.
Wow.
So, you know, it can't all be accidental.
You know, it's speaking of things not being accidental, this story that came out in the Daily Caller, was it Chuck Ross?
Yeah, Chuck Ross.
Who wrote this thing about, you know, Dr. Corsi had helped somebody with a GoFundMe. The guy had cancer. The doctor didn't want to disseminate his name on the internet, so he just, you know, said, "Oh, doctor, whatever." But he is a real doctor. There's no merit to the case. This is just totally, you know, brought up coincidentally right after you guys announced this action.
And Chuck Ross is working for the Daily Caller. Daily Caller is not terribly conservative, not terribly right-wing. This is Tucker Carlson's, creation until he went to Fox. He still has a piece of the action over there. But Chuck Ross says to Jerry when he calls him up to ask him about this, "I have information from a source with the special counsel that you were committing, you know, fraud over the internet to raise this money."
Right.
So they conceded that there was a leak because that information came from these victims in South Florida that were hauled before the grand jury, also to intimidate Jerry because of his business relationships. So it was an admission of the illegal criminal grand jury leaks. That's part of the case.
Well, and of course, that's something that you've been on to for some time. You've done shows on Crowdsource the Truth where we've presented the FOIA documents. We were at the hearing with Emmett Sullivan. What's happening with that case?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I'm glad you brought that up because it seems that there is a, for lack of a better word, mindset that is developing over at the district court here in Washington, D.C., where there are some judges who previously, in some small degree, like Sullivan, were willing to hold Mueller's feet to the fire, are getting cold feet, so to speak.
Interesting.
And you see it recently with Michael Flynn, General Flynn, with Sullivan.
Right.
Everybody thought he would dismiss the Flynn case.
Right.
Instead, he went, excuse the French, apeshit, and really vilified Flynn as being a traitor. You might remember that.
Well,
He's not a traitor.
Yeah, he asked, but just even saying that word was like throwing red meat to the dogs.
They're scared of Mueller. It's the Hoover thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we did get some documents which showed Peter Carr's likely leaks at Paul Restaurant.
Yeah.
And heavy redactions. And the government moves for summary judgment, and we file a pleading. And an order actually came out yesterday where, and I'll put it up on our website, I've been so busy,
Freedom Watch,
where
USA.org.
Sullivan is not taking a strong position about forcing them to produce more documents.
Really?
And he kind of poo-poos the fact that we think Peter Carr was leaking.
What?
So the question is, has someone gotten to Sullivan at this point?
Wow.
And, so my praise of him is going to be somewhat tempered going into the future. I like him, he's a nice man. But like you said, what does Mueller have on these people? What is he doing with the judges? Is he intimidating them? Is he going behind the scenes? It happens. This stuff happens. Now, I know judges ex parte a lot. They talk a lot, even though they're not supposed to.
Ex parte just means a conversation outside.
Without the other side present. So I was very, very disappointed to see that, but I'm not done with that. We have appellate rights, and I'm going to go back to Sullivan. I'm going to be tough with him like I was with Leon. I'm going to say, what's up, Your Honor? Are you here for justice, or are you here to protect Robert Mueller?
Yeah.
I won't say it. I'll say it more diplomatically than.
Well, he might be watching this stream right now.
Yeah, he's a nice man, but nice is one thing, but doing your job is another.
Right.
And I can never restrain myself, Jason. I can't play the game. Most lawyers will never criticize judges, because they're in front of them.
Right.
But I'm sorry, I don't want to be a lawyer and particularly a trial lawyer, if I have to roll over and kiss the judges behind when he did something that's wrong,
Absolutely.
And, I've paid the price for it, with judges. And
perhaps even yesterday.
But I'm not going to change, because our judges are really our most important public servants, and they need to be pure, and they need to be independent, not the nonsense that Chief Justice Roberts says that once they become judges, all of a sudden they become like priests and nuns or rabbis or ministers. They're not. Okay, they're people, and they have prejudices, they have biases.
Fears.
And in the federal system, when you get into cases like I get into, you can almost with 100% certainty predict the result based upon who pointed that judge to the bench. And it shouldn't be that way. And that nonsense that I'm trying to be nice to the Chief Justice, that he spewed forth a few weeks ago when Trump criticized that judge in San Francisco that reversed the whole issue of asylum.
Yeah.
That's dishonest for Roberts to tell that to the American people, to say that, I'm sorry, judges are independent. They're not independent, not when you get into these kinds of matters. And in a later show we can talk about, I have a proposal on how to choose better judges. We need to amend the Constitution and start getting better judges. And Trump is not putting good judges on the bench.
Yeah.
He's telling you that, and he thinks he is, because he's taking the recommendations of the Federalist Society and the Republican establishment. And these judges are not the judges that they're cracked up to be. I've been in front of at least two Trump judges so far, and they're very weak-kneed. 3 weak-kneed. And look at Kavanaugh. He's made some bad decisions in the last few weeks because he's so much on the defense.
I really wish that his whole confirmation hearing could have been about this Fourth Amendment issue, that he is totally okay with everybody being spied on. This is such an important topic. Sometimes I have these conversations with people where the things start soaking in, and what do we do, Larry? I mean, these are the courts. So if Robert Mueller and his team or someone of that degree of power is to intimidate a judge, where does that person go? They're the judge. They're the federal judge.
I mean, they're our last line of defense. That's what I told Judge Leon yesterday. They protect us from the tyranny of the legislative and executive branches of government. They protect us from ourselves. Okay?
But what about the tyranny from Robert Mueller?
Right. Now, that's not to say that surveillance is not warranted when there's probable cause of a crime being committed or communications with terrorist interests.
Right.
Then it's important. But what we have right now is a dragnet over the entire American people.
Right.
And anybody that they consider to be on their enemies list, they can pull stuff up, and everybody has stuff in their past that they don't want people to know, and blackmail them. For instance, I said this on the radio show. You know, there have been rumors for years that the Chief Justice is a closet homosexual. Roberts. Okay, he was very strong on gay rights when he was at Hogan and Hartson before it became popular.
Is he married?
Yeah, there's nothing. I'm not a homophobe. You're not either.
But you could understand how a married man would not want that information.
No, but
to
in
come
that
out.
generation, you don't want that out. Okay? So, and in Washington, D.C., there are a lot of people that are married to what colloquially you'll call beards, okay, for appearance purposes.
Because at that time, that's what people did who
You
wanted
needed
to
that
be in the
for-
professional world.
Right. And so somebody like Roberts wouldn't want that out. So ask yourself the question, is that something that they have on Roberts that has caused him to become just slightly right of center, to have flipped on Obamacare at the last minute? Is that something that they dug up on him, that they coerced him with, the deep state?
Larry, I just saw something today that said that a company called Serco handles all the processing of the Obamacare applications, and it was a $1.2 billion contract to do that. That's Serco Inc., a U.S. corporation that is a wholly owned subsidiary of Serco Group, which is a British company that started out as RCA, Great Britain, in 1929. And, you know, I talk about this extensively with David Hawkins, and it's always fascinating when I have, you know, this is really one of the great things about Crowdsource the Truth. I have such experienced experts in such diverse fields, and when these things converge, the thing I'm getting at is this, you know, the tie to Obamacare. British intelligence is basically famous for blackmail operations, brownstoning, etc. We know all about Jimmy Savile and the BBC, and he was a necrophiliac and a pedophile, and procuring kids for, you know, royalty. This is all documented, known stuff. So the question becomes now, you know, we've got these corporations embedded in these government contracts and all that. To what extent are they entrapping these politicians to get dirt to blackmail them with? It's unknown.
Well, I can assure you that it's happening. And in fact, look at the Clinton impeachment years, okay? Newt Gingrich. You know, Newt's a very smart guy, but he was Speaker of the House then. And he was co-opted because he was having an affair at the time with his current wife, Calista, okay? Calista was working for a openly gay Republican congressman by the name of Steve Gunterson. And Gunterson learned that Calista was having an affair with Newt when the impeachment was going on. And consequently, through Barney Frank and others, his other gay buddies on the Hill, they got to Gingrich, and they said, you better not expand this impeachment to going beyond Monica Lewinsky to Chinagate, IRS-gate, Travelgate, etc. And they compromised that entire thing. And it was because Newt was having this affair with his now current wife. And they had the stuff on him. And that didn't go through the NSA. That was just because, you know. But just think the power of the NSA now and the CIA and the FBI, what they can do with these congressmen and senators and other officials in Washington and around the country.
Well, do you see a solution, Larry? I mean, how can we stop a tyrannical, dirty cop like Robert Mueller?
Well, I'm trying to do it peacefully and legally, and I pray that we will get the judge that will do that, Judge Uvell. You know, we've got other things up our sleeve. We're amending the complaint now. I don't need to keep it narrow anymore to make it related. So there's going to be more things in there, abusive process, otherwise. But we're not done. And the court of public opinion, your show is very important, my radio show, you know, the websites. People need to expose what's going on, but we got to do more than just expose. You know, my former group gets documents, but what's different between them is me is that I try to do it myself. I don't ask other people to do the job of the people.
I think they're doing some good work, to be fair. I know you've got beef with them, but I really still do hold out hope that someday you guys can come together.
No, it won't happen because, you know, Fitton's tried to harm me and my family for many years. It's beyond the pale.
And there's no apology he could make, no amends?
No. And he is not, in my opinion, an honest person. I'm sorry.
Let me not take you down this road. We don't want to go
I mean, don't get me down there. And, you know, what I'm saying is, and it's comparative advertising, okay, is that it's one thing to get documents. Okay, that can be good. Okay, but what do you do with the documents? You know, if you have cards, you got to put them on the table and play cards. You know, you got to play for the dough.
It
Okay?
did feel very much
And
like
that's
a
the
poker
difference
game
between
yesterday.
Freedom Watch and Judicial Watch today. Look, Judicial Watch is still my baby. Okay, I don't want it to go down the drain. I just wish they had a different person leading it. But the reality is that, you know, we the people need to do it. That's why we have citizens grand juries. We're starting them this month.
Right.
These cases, why I have actual clients. Judicial Watch doesn't have that many actual clients. They're looking for documents all the time.
Now there were
And
a lot
Corsi gives me a great opportunity, notwithstanding that I believe in him and
Yeah.
want him not to be indicted,
right.
to frontally challenge Mueller.
Yeah.
You see?
I mean, but if they're able to, and we're just speculating, we don't know that this happened, but if they are able to somehow influence judges, what hope do we have?
Well, we got to get better judges, and we've
Who-
got to
who
hold
would
the,
that
we
type
got to
of
hold the
thing-
judges to account. Okay, you know, judges are not totally immune. So if they violate constitutional rights, they could be technically sued just like Mueller's being sued. And it's time that we started holding them accountable. It's tough to do because other judges would sit on the case.
Yeah,
you
they don't
see.
want to set a
And
precedent
they circle the
for
wagons.
judges to be sued.
But here's the alternative, Jason. I wrote a column last week. It's on our website at freedomwatchusa.org. I hope people will contribute to our cause.
Yeah.
Tax deductible. Is 2019 the year of bloody revolution? We, the people, must try to head it off. I believe we're very close to a second American revolution that can be very violent and very destructive. And the left will ignite it.
It's
with
already-
the Antifas.
Yeah.
But if they go for Trump's head, okay, and I don't want to see this happen, if the left goes for his head and tries to take him down and nullify the people's vote, I think that the right, particularly the far right, will be out there in the streets, and they'll be taking on the Antifas and the Black Lives Matter and the radical feminists and the atheists and everybody else. And I think there could be a bloodbath. And I'll tell you something, the right is a lot better armed than the left.
Well, I hope it
And-
doesn't come to that, but they are inciting it. Civility is going away. And they'll say, oh, well, Trump's a bully, this and that. I mean, Trump's not getting on TV and calling people mother effers the way Rashida, was it Tlaib? What is the new congresswoman's name who did that yesterday?
Yeah, who knows?
I mean, so she says we need to impeach him. I would, it's, you know,
And what did Pelosi say? Oh, Trump says far worse.
she says Trump says far worse and she's not in the censorship business. That's what she said, which is
Yeah.
absolutely absurd given the level of censorship that we've seen. You know, I'm sure if Laura Loomer said that and it went out in a tweet, maybe, I mean, she didn't call for violence. She's just using foul language. But
No, she's calling for violence. That's what she's doing. Look, she's talking to her Muslim brothers and sisters. They're not exactly teetotalers, Jason. Okay, not all of them. They're good Muslims.
she's calling for
They're
impeachment.
good Muslims, but there are a hell of a lot of radical Muslims too. Okay, that are very happy to, take you out.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be blunt.
I
okay?
really kind of object to this rule change in Congress where now they are allowing headgear to accommodate the incoming devout Muslims who want to wear headgear. This is the United States. This is Congress. I think if you want to be in Congress, you should follow the rules for Congress, not make it bend to your will.
Absolutely. And then you had this Muslim doctor at the Cleveland Clinic
Terrible.
that was making statements like Louis Farrakhan, that Jews were subhuman, and that
Well, no, she
was-
said she was going to deliberately give the wrong medicine to Jews.
Right, but here's where we are in this country, okay? And there was a women's group that canceled their meeting or whatever
Toodle Laura.
because they were the people
Too
that were
white.
organizing it were promoting white people in positions. If you're a white person today, things have flipped. Okay, you have less rights than some minorities, and we should all have equal rights. I don't want to sound like a Klansman here.
Right.
I abhor that. I abhor racism and that kind of thing. But we all need to be treated equally. And frankly, white people today are at the back of the bus. It's reversed.
Yeah.
And if you're Muslim, you can get away with all kinds of stuff. If you're radical black, you can get away with all kinds of stuff. Look at what Obama got away with. Anytime you question where he was born or his birth certificate, you're a racist.
Right.
Okay? And I'm going to call it like it is. You can't say this on Fox News. They'll freak.
Mm-hmm.
They'll
Can't
never come on
even
again.
say it on Newsmax, apparently, but the birth certificate is forged. That is for sure. And unless somebody wants to call me racist against PDF documents, it's got nothing to do.
Nobody ever said where he was born.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
It's forged. You're not African American in 1961. You're black or Negro, okay, on that birth certificate.
Well, and the one shouldn't be a different color than the August, whatever, 1960.
And you know, Judge Roy Moore, when he was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, was the only one that ruled in my favor when I brought a case, and he came down with a dissenting opinion, Alabama, believe it or not, that to register to be president, to run for president, you should have to present your birth certificate. What's wrong with that? He didn't say that Obama was born in Kenya.
Right.
He just said it's reasonable to ask for a bona fide,
Right.
certified birth certificate if you want to run for president to prove you're a natural born citizen.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and that applies whether you're white, black, yellow, green, or blue, you know.
Well, I think it's also reasonable that you should be a citizen to get a driver's license and to vote and all that sort of stuff.
But he's
they don't
branded
want
as a
any of that.
racist because, okay, he thinks everybody should be treated equal. You know, because he's from Alabama, because all people from the South are, quote, racist. You know, I take offense at that. I'm a quasi-Southerner myself. I went to Duke and Emory Law School, and I can tell you the South is a hell of a lot less racist than the North.
I was just reminded of what it is, and I'm cautious to bring this up because I know it's a sore spot, but I just wanted to share with you. What happened yesterday that Judicial Watch, I think, was pivotally involved with was there was a ruling that's going to remove thousands of illegal voters from the rolls in California. And I saw it on either Judicial Watch's YouTube channel or a tweet or something like that. So, you know,
Well, look, I don't want to get into it with you on that. But,
No, yeah, of
you know,
course.
Fitton has a tendency to overplay what goes on over there. So,
but there are good things that can.
yeah, I mean, there are good things. They got some good documents. But I would like Judicial Watch to succeed. I left them with $20 million in the bank when I left to run for the Senate.
Nice.
They were able to use that to advance themselves. They've got about $85 million in the bank now.
Wow.
We have a lot less. So that's an advertisement.
Well, hopefully people will go
But-
to freedomwatchusa.org and
Yeah.
support all the cases that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's important also to remember that you are representing Dr. Corsi in your private capacity, and people can support Dr. Corsi's legal battle against Robert Mueller either by going to corsination.com or to larryklayman.com.
Yeah, and again, Jason, I'm not jealous. What I'm saying is this, it's comparative advertising. We need it. We need the funds, we need the support because we're actually doing the heavy lifting. We're the mouse that roared.
You are all over
and it's
the
good
place.
to get
It's true,
it's
Larry.
good to get documents, but then what are you going to do with the documents?
Right.
See?
I think that you are taking up a fight that's so important right now because all these other lawyers, see, just like you are willing to sit here and speak with me or whoever you appear with and say it like it is without fear of repercussions if you believe what you're saying is right, rather than some of these other lawyers that we see trying to get their clients plea deals and doing all these sort of things where they just want to end the thing and get on to the next case or get out of the courtroom or whatever it was that was going on there yesterday. It's just so crazy, the level of personality and detail and complexity that's going on
Well,
there.
Dr. Corsi and I, Jerry, are like the Energizer Bunny, okay? Jerry's 72, I'm 67, okay, but we're still going strong.
Yeah.
We'll do this till the very end, and we don't want to see this country go down the drain. And I would rather be, I've said this before, be flipping hamburgers at McDonald's if I cannot say and do what I think is right. I'm not going to do it to curry favor, to be politically correct, to get on Fox News with Sean Hannity or anybody else. I'm going to do what I think is right. And if I think that Obama has a fraudulent birth certificate, I'm going to bring cases and I'm going to pursue that. Or if I think that George W. Bush was illegally surveilling people, which he was, I brought cases against him on that before Obama.
Yeah.
Cheney with his energy task force that he wouldn't reveal who was sitting on that task force as they were dividing up the oil fields in Iraq. That's why we went to Iraq.
Yeah.
You know, and then we didn't even get the oil. I mean, Trump was right. What kind of idiots are we?
Well, I think they wanted to stop Saddam Hussein from selling oil for euros and threatening the power of the petrodollar. But I agree.
Cheney also cooked the books at Halliburton.
Oh, yeah.
With Pete Warwick Mitchell. I sued him for for accounting fraud, okay, while he was vice president. See, these aren't percentage things to do if you're the head of Judicial Watch.
Right.
Okay, but I did it because I thought it was right.
Well, it's also important to point out that it's not always left and right. I mean,
No.
obviously, George W., Dick Cheney, they're Republicans, they're neocons, they're as right as you get. So I don't see it so much as a left and right thing. I see it as we've got some really serious criminals who are basically in some of the top level positions in our government, and it's really an incredibly complex, I guess they call it a Gordian knot, to try to unravel even just what you would need to do to approach justice. Why haven't we heard anything from Rod Rosenstein in so long?
Well, and you hit a really interesting point. The investigations in the House ended this week,
Yeah.
okay, before Pelosi was sworn in as Speaker, with a whimper. They didn't even prepare a report.
Right.
Okay, so this gets back to my main point. Again, I'm not picking on, well, I am actually. But okay, Fitton goes on TV and he says, okay, we're going to work with the House to do this. We're going to ask the Justice Department to do this. What do? Nothing, right? So they've accomplished little to nothing. They never even got Rosenstein to come back. He ran out the clock, to testify.
Right.
And this is why people have lost respect for Congress. I think it's a joke. I don't even bother going up there anymore.
Well,
It's a waste of time.
they're going to bars and cursing out the president. And
No, they're having affairs. There's 8 women for every 1 man up there, and for the men that like other men, there's the possibilities up there too.
Now, just before we started this conversation, Larry, we heard that the grand jury has now been extended. So what are the implications of that with regard
Well,
to the Mueller
it shows that
investigation?
Mueller's not done. He's going to issue a interim report. That's going to trigger impeachment even more.
Right.
But he's going to continue on to 2020, continuing to harass people, weakening the president, because both political establishments, remember, Mueller is a Republican establishment. They want to take the president down to run their candidate in 2020. And of course, Mitt Romney, he's not an idiot. He may be, at this point, evil, but he's not an idiot. And he was setting himself up to run in the primaries against Trump this week.
Well, kind of like, fashion from the 70s and 80s, his foreign policy is back. Barack Obama wanted him to call the 80s when he was worried about Russia, so perhaps Mitt Romney is in the catbird seat. I don't think he's a good candidate, and I would like to see Donald Trump continue in 2020. The biggest problem with all of this is that it's, right now our government is shut down because instead of saying, okay, this is the president that the majority, even if it was 1%, this is the way the system works. Even if Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote without cheating.
I think the government should stay shut down.
I agree with that.
It's not shut down. Only 20% is shut down, the non-essential services.
Yeah.
And like I told you at the beginning, most of these lawyers at the Justice Department walk around kibitzing and shooting the breeze all day long. We don't need all of them, okay?
Right.
You could cut it 70%.
And still be good.
And it would be more effective.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I hope it stays shut down, frankly.
It doesn't seem to be affecting much other than less traffic.
That's great, less traffic.
Less traffic here in Washington, D.C. But I mean, the net effect, of course, is that the president hasn't been able to focus on the economy and international negotiations and things. I mean, it seems like there was a moment where he was really hitting a stride, and then they just clamped down harder. They start going after more people. They start expanding. What about the questions of the legality of what Mueller is doing in the first place? Isn't there supposed to be a specific accusation of a crime? We haven't seen that
No,
yet.
absolutely, and many people have said that. And,
Why can't they just shut
he
it down?
should have been confirmed by the Senate for that position. He's like an attorney general. He's more powerful than the attorney general.
How were they able to
some ways.
circumvent that process?
Well, they just look the other way. How did Obama get to be president of the United States when he's not a national-born citizen? Technically, wherever he's born, okay, whatever his birth certificate,
We haven't seen it.
if one of your parents is not native-born, you do not qualify as a natural-born citizen. Emmerich Vattel, Law of Nations, that's the definition of natural-born citizen. The framers did not want, they wanted some buffer between parents and a presidential candidate because the Tories were still very influential at the beginning of our country. And in fact, there was a movement, which included even Alexander Hamilton, to go back to a limited monarchy and to align with the crown again.
Whoa.
You know, Washington headed it off, and
Yeah.
others. But, I mean, we were teetering in the beginning.
Right.
They were looking for a lifeline back to England. So that's why they have that in there. Now, if you don't like that, amend the Constitution.
Right.
But Obama didn't qualify. So therefore, anybody that said he wasn't a natural-born citizen, regardless of where he was born, became a racist,
Right.
you see. And McCain didn't qualify, Rubio didn't qualify, Romney didn't qualify.
Cruz didn't qualify.
Yeah, one of his parents was Canadian and applied to whites, blacks, and whoever. But if you make that allegation with regard to Obama, you're a racist.
How long until we have an undocumented presidential candidate?
Probably not too long.
Probably not.
Yeah, yeah. And well, I would say that Obama was undocumented.
Right. Well, he had a fake document.
He was never naturalized if he was born elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly, I don't have any evidence that he was born elsewhere, but my evaluation of the birth certificate, 100%, it's a digital forgery. There is no doubt. And there's just, we don't even need to get into that, but there is so much evidence. And it's crazy that if you even want to debate that, it gets shut down. Climate deniers. There's no place for climate deniers. Well, look, there's no doubt that pollution is real and that the environment is being destroyed. The crux of it is they're trying to convince us that carbon dioxide is the primary culprit and that we need to reduce our carbon dioxide. That's incorrect. That's scientifically false. It's other chemicals that are being put into the environment that are a problem. And the real issue with that, I think, is this climate exchange that they've created where they've got this financial transaction based. It's just another crazy scheme.
Well, you know the problem with that is, I may have a little different view, okay, is that I believe that things change. Things don't always remain the same, as the French say, you know. There could very well be global warming, but it's overemphasized. You have these radical environmental groups that want to use it to take control through the government and control your life, and that both sides should rationally get together and deal with it.
But you're not even allowed to talk about it.
You're not even allowed to talk about it. And so one side denies it, the other side is going crazy to try to get government to take control of your life, like happened with the Bundys and others. And there's something, you know, we should sit down and have a rational discussion. But of course you can't these days with the left. You know, they have their agenda, and their agenda is to take the country over and dismantle it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things for us to talk about, Larry, but we're just about out of time here. You know, of course, we want people to go to freedomwatchusa.org. We want people to go to LarryKlayman.com. We want people to go to
CorsiNation.com and the Bundys, ClyvenBundyDefenseFund.org, because this appeal is continuing, and they're trying to put the Bundys away for life. And you know, this is a serious matter, and I hope next time we're on we'll talk more about that. I did in the last show. Yeah. But
when's the next,
it's an outrage.
When's the next hearing on the Bundy case?
Well, the government has to file its brief by January 21st, and then we have about a month to file ours. And
what stops President Trump from getting involved and pardoning them?
He should. I think.
Can people petition the president, write to him?
They should. They should. And you know, the poor guy's so preoccupied. I don't know if you saw him right after Christmas, but you know, that's the only time I ever saw him look down and out. I mean, he was so beaten up. You know,
they're coming at him from every side. I mean, this is the tactic. This is the tactic. They don't relent. They've got a team. They pick their target, and they hammer and hammer.
I have to say, I loved Reagan. I tear over when I go to the Reagan Library. But I got to tell you, I like Trump even more because he says it like it is, and it's a different time.
It is.
Yeah.
And you know, for everybody who doubts Donald Trump and thinks he's part of the game or whatever, I don't think so. I think he's imperfect. I think he's gaining experience as a politician and as the president, obviously, of all the things he has experience with. This is an area where he did not have that much experience. And when I say experience, this is sort of what I'm picking up from watching you in a courtroom. It's one thing to read a law book. It's one thing to read that list of rules, 40A, B, subsection, whatever. But when you see the interaction in the courtroom, you know, there are humans there, and we're complex. And as you said, you did something in the past that maybe irritated this judge in some way, and it's amazing to see the effect that that has on the process. And
they're supposed to be independent and neutral and take it out of their mind.
Yes.
And that's why I was trying to flatter him in the beginning. To say,
Right.
But we'll work out fine. And
See, and I didn't know all this backstory when you were doing that, but I could tell that something wasn't going right.
Yeah. Well, a judge, you can't take things personally. You got to be able to take criticism, just like lawyers. They can issue orders, they can sanction us as the judges, as lawyers, but we can't sanction them.
Yeah.
But yet we can't talk to them straight up and tell them what our issue is, and that's a real problem.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, there's so much to talk about, Larry, but we've got to run. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For joining me. It's always great
My
when
good
we
friend
get together
and
talk.
colleague.
Absolutely, Larry.
Thanks, guy.
Thank you. And thanks, everybody, for watching. I'll see everybody tomorrow.